Recently, something pretty meaningful happened in my business. The framework that I teach, called CEO Hour, was officially registered as a trademark. But the interesting part of the story is actually why I decided to do it in the first place. If we haven't met, I'm Kathleen Lawson. I'm a business strategist, and I help female service-based solopreneurs build structure, strategy, and consistency in their business. So CEO Hours started as a weekly planning practice that I developed for myself. And when it was so impactful for me, then I started sharing it with clients. It's 1 hour a week to step back and run the business like a CEO. It's that pause to get organized, to set priorities, to make decisions, to really lead your business with intention. But over time, it became a core framework that I teach, and it became programs and workshops that I run, and it became the foundation of my CEO Momentum membership. It really just became a central idea in how I help business owners build structure. So at first, CEO Hour was a catchy little phrase that I was pretty proud of, but over time, it became part of my intellectual property. Now, the idea of trademarking had come up here and there over the years. It got mentioned to me a few times, but I always dismissed it pretty quickly. I never gave it a ton of thought until I saw an email that another coach had sent talking about CEO Hour, and my stomach dropped. And then I realized something really important, and that's that CEO Hour wasn't just like this cute, catchy phrase anymore. It was a huge part of my brand. It was all over my programs. It was all over my client work. It was all over my content. I mean, it was all over everything that I did. And if I didn't protect it, I could eventually lose control over how it was used. So, trademarking something is not a small decision. You need legal help. You really need to hire an attorney. And it costs money. It costs several $1,000s. And at the time that this all came up, that I was making this decision, I was not sitting in a place of financial certainty. We had some personal things going on that were impacting finances, and I had a kid that was just a couple months from starting college. So I found myself asking questions like, is this really the right time to spend this money? Am I overreacting? Do I really need to do this? But CEO Hour had already become such a central part of my work that I realized if something is that important to my business, it deserves to be protected. And sometimes the right business decisions happen during uncertain or difficult times. It's not always when everything's easy and breezy and comfortable. So let's talk a little bit about the logistics here. Like what a trademark actually is. It's a trademark protects the name of a product, a service, or a program used in business. So in my case, CEO Hour is tied to my planning framework and my business methodology. So what you're protecting is the name connected to a service. Where you have like copyrights that protect content, trademarks protect brand names, program names. I hired an attorney, and I would recommend that you hire an attorney for this every time. My attorney is wonderful, and I will include her information below. So there were things that I had to do during this process, and there were things that she did. So I had to show how the name CEO Hour was being used in my business. So it was a lot of copying and pasting things, website, my course, materials, social posts, just like all the places I was using it. I had to explain what the framework actually is. I had to provide all my business information, and then anytime that she sent something in, I had to review that first and approve it. So the original application, we had some clarifying questions along the way, so I had to approve that every time. And then what she had to do was the original search, the trademark search, to make sure the name wasn't already taken. She filed the application. She chose the correct legal classification, and in my case, multiple classifications. We did file on a couple of classifications. She handled the clarifying questions that came up. She monitored the whole process, and she warned me about the spam, which was no small thing. She told me that once we filed, and then again during the publishing period, that I would most likely get spam, and it did come in both email and snail mail. Very official looking, looked like an invoice. that I had to pay, but she had assured me ahead of time that I paid everything I need to pay. I do not need to pay anything else, and anything that I got, I was to throw away. And so I was very happy that she gave me that heads up, because it was a little unnerving. So this is where having an attorney really matters. You know, that spam would have definitely sent me into a panic, and I would have never gotten the classifications right and all the clarifying questions. There was just a lot of legal, bits to this. And I know a lot of people like to try and shortcut things when it comes to this. I would not recommend it. Hire an attorney. And then you've got the timeline, and maybe you've heard or maybe you haven't, but the trademark process is a bit of a long one. So first, your attorney conducts the trademark search, and then they file the application. And that initial period took a couple of weeks. And then once the application is filed with it's the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, USPTO, there's a waiting period before it's reviewed by an examiner. And that waiting period, I think, is what kind of keeps lengthening. And for me, it took that part was 7 months that we waited before we heard back. After that, the mark is published for a 30-day opposition period where someone else could challenge it. And if nobody objects and everything's approved, then the trademark's registered. So in total, the entire process typically takes somewhere from 9 months to a year. And that was how long mine took. It was a little over 9 months. And what does a trademark actually give you? It gives you the legal right to use that name in connection with your services, and it protects it from confusing similar uses in the same category. So if someone starts marketing something under a name that could cause confusion, then that's where you have that gives you that legal protection. What it does not mean is that you own that phrase in every context, or that people can't use the words in normal everyday conversation. So if someone said, hey, I'm doing my CEO hour on Friday, I'd say, great, but I don't have any legal right to that. They're allowed to say that. So it's really about when somebody's marketing that phrase that's going to cause confusion with what I do. So it protects the brand connected to the service. So in closing, CEO hours started as a very simple planning practice, 1 hour a week. It was a very simple structure, but over time, it became a central framework in my work. And when something that important, or when something becomes that important in your business, it becomes a real business asset, and protecting it is part of running your business like a CEO. So structure doesn't just apply to how we plan our week. It also applies to how we protect what we build.